a boss. Until new proud, Maid broke his ego. Iris Cole stood outside the towering iron gates of the Hawthorne estate at 6 in the morning, watching the previous Maid sprint past her like she was fleeing a crime scene. The woman's mascara streaked down her face in black rivers, her uniform torn at the shoulder, screaming into her phone that no amount of money was worth another hour in that godforsaken hellhole. Behind her, two more maids stumbled out carrying half-packed suitcases, one of them muttering prayers under her breath and crossing herself repeatedly. The other one looked shell-shocked, eyes vacant like she'd witnessed something that broke her soul. Iris adjusted the straps of her worn backpack, looked up at the Gothic mansion looming against the dawn sky like a monument to darkness, and thought to herself that people really needed to develop thicker skin. She'd survived worse than a demanding boss. Way worse. Before we dive into this story, smash that brave or crazy for walking into this. The gates opened and a man in an impeccable suit appeared. Sebastian, the head butler, looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past month. He studied Iris with the exhausted expression of someone who'd given up on hope. "You're the new maid from the agency?" "Iris Cole. Ready to start." Sebastian sighed heavily. "Did you read the contract?" "Including the section about not holding the Hawthorne family liable for psychological damages, emotional distress, or physical injury resulting from." "I read it. All 43 pages. Very thorough." Iris's tone was dry. "Especially loved the part about signing away my right to therapy claims. Real confidence booster." Sebastian didn't smile. "Miss Cole, I need you to understand something before you walk through these doors. Jackson Hawthorne is impossible. 17 maids in 6 months. None lasted more than a day. Most quit within hours. Some had to be escorted out by security while having complete breakdowns. Sounds like a him problem, not a me problem." Iris met his gaze steadily. "I'm here to work, get paid, and keep my electricity on. Your boss's personality disorders aren't my concern unless they interfere with my paycheck." Something flickered in Sebastian's eyes. Respect maybe, or pity. He gestured toward the mansion. "This way." They walked through gardens that probably cost more to maintain than Iris had earned in her entire life. The mansion itself was obscene, all black marble and floor-to-ceiling windows and the kind of wealth that forgot normal people existed. Sebastian led her through corridors lined with expensive art, past rooms bigger than the apartment Iris shared with 3 roommates. He stopped outside a heavy oak door. "Mr. Hawthorne is in his study. He'll want to meet you before you start." "Great. Can't wait." Iris's voice dripped sarcasm. Sebastian knocked twice. A voice from inside barked something that might have been permission to enter. The butler opened the door and gestured for Iris to go in. The study was all dark wood and leather furniture and windows overlooking the estate. Behind a massive desk sat Jackson Hawthorne. Phone pressed his ear, conducting business in a voice that could freeze blood. He was younger than Iris expected, mid-30s maybe, with sharp features, cold gray eyes, and the kind of controlled intensity that made people instinctively step back. He didn't acknowledge her presence, just kept talking, his tone cutting through whoever was on the other end of that call like a blade through flesh. "I don't care about your excuses. The shipment was due yesterday. Fix it, or I'll find someone competent to replace you." Iris stood there, refusing to fidget or look away. She'd learned young that showing weakness invited predators. So she waited, back straight, chin up, meeting his gaze when he finally glanced at her. Jackson ended the call without saying goodbye, set the phone down with deliberate precision, looked Iris up and down with obvious disdain, taking her cheap jeans, discount store shoes, and the defiant set of her shoulders. "You're the new maid." His voice was flat, unimpressed. "Iris Cole. Started today. Do you know who I am?" "Jackson Hawthorne, owner of this estate. Reportedly impossible to work for based on your turnover rate." Iris kept her tone even. "Also rumored to be involved in organized crime. But that wasn't in the job description, so I'm choosing to ignore it." Sebastian made a choking sound. Jackson's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Cute." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Here are the rules. You will be invisible. You don't speak unless I speak to you first. You don't touch anything in my private wing without explicit permission. You work silently. If you annoy me even once, you're gone. Understood? Iris tilted her head slightly. Are you finished with your power trip? Because I have actual work to do. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Sebastian looked like he was witnessing a murder. Two security guards who'd been standing motionless in the corners tensed, hands moving toward concealed weapons. Jackson stood slowly, moved around his desk with predatory grace. He was tall, at least 6'2", and used every inch to intimidate as he stopped directly in front of Iris, towering over her. Do you know what happens to people who speak to me that way? Iris had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact, but she didn't step back. Didn't flinch. I'm guessing they get fired. Which would be stupid, because you'd have to train another maid, and based on your track record, that's not going well for you. You have no idea who you're talking to. I know exactly who you are. Iris's voice stayed steady. You're a man used to everyone cowering and kissing your ring, which is probably why you're so insufferable. People who never get challenged turn into tyrants. It's basic psychology. Jackson stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You think you can speak to me however you want because why? You have a degree in psychology from some community college? I have a degree in surviving people far scarier than you. Iris held his gaze. I grew up with an alcoholic father who used me as a punching bag. Spent my teens in foster homes where the older kids stole everything I owned. Worked 3 jobs to put myself through school while living in my car. So no, a rich man with control issues doesn't scare me. Not even a little. The silence stretched. Jackson's jaw clenched, muscle jumping. His gray eyes searched her face, looking for the fear everyone else showed. Finding nothing but steel wrapped in pride. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. But I'm also excellent at my job, and you clearly need someone competent since you can't keep staff. So unless you plan to fire me in the first 5 minutes, I'd like to get started. Rent's due in 2 weeks, and my bank account is crying. Something flickered in Jackson's eyes. Surprise, anger, and something else he couldn't quite name. He stepped back, returned to his desk. You have 1 day. 1 day to prove you're not completely useless. If you last until tomorrow morning, we'll talk. 1 day is all I need. Get out. Iris turned and walked out, her heart hammering but her pace steady. Sebastian followed, closing the door behind them. In the hallway, he looked at her with something between horror and admiration. No one has ever spoken to him that way. Then everyone before me was doing it wrong. Iris adjusted her backpack. Where do I start? Sebastian led Iris to the staff quarters, handed her a uniform, and rattled off the daily schedule with the exhausted tone of someone who'd done this too many times. She had 30 minutes to change and familiarize herself with the supply closet before her shift officially began. He warned her that Jackson would test her, push her boundaries, try to break her like he'd broken all the others. Iris thanked him and said she'd been broken before and put herself back together. One more time wouldn't kill her. The uniform fit poorly, but she made it work. By 7 a.m., she was pushing a cleaning cart through the East Wing, starting with the guest rooms that hadn't been touched in weeks. The previous maids had apparently given up on thorough cleaning, focusing only on spaces Jackson directly inhabited. Iris didn't have to do anything. She stripped beds, washed windows, scrubbed floors until they gleamed. 2 hours into her shift, Jackson appeared in the doorway of the room she was cleaning. She didn't stop working, just acknowledged him with a brief glance and continued polishing the mirror. You missed dust on the windowsill. His voice was cold, critical. Iris walked to the window, ran her finger along the sill, held it up. No dust. You're looking at the reflection from the trees outside. The glass is clean. Jackson's eyes narrowed. The bathroom needs attention. I cleaned it an hour ago. Feel free to inspect. He did. Came back looking annoyed that he couldn't find fault. Your coffee is weak. Make it stronger. The coffee pot is in the kitchen. You know where that is. Iris kept her tone professional but firm. I'm a maid, not your personal barista. There's a difference. Excuse me? The household manual Sebastian gave me lists my responsibilities. Making your coffee isn't on it. But if you'd like to add it to my duties and adjust my pay accordingly, I'm happy to discuss terms. Jackson stared at her like she was speaking another language. Every previous maid had scrambled to fulfill his every whim, terrified of displeasing him. This woman was negotiating her job description to his face. "You're fired." "No, I'm not." Iris didn't even look up from the dresser she was dusting. "You said I had 1 day. It's only been 2 hours. And firing me means admitting you can't handle someone who doesn't grovel. That would be embarrassing for you." The fury that crossed Jackson's face should have terrified her. Instead, Iris just kept working, moving around the room with efficient precision. After a long moment, Jackson turned and left without another word. She heard him barking orders at someone down the hall, his voice sharp with frustration. By noon, Iris had cleaned 6 rooms to perfection. She took her lunch break in the staff kitchen, eating the sandwich she'd packed from home while reading a worn copy of Jane Eyre. The other staff kept their distance, watching her like she was a fascinating experiment that might explode. One of the cooks, an older woman named Rosa, finally approached. "You're different from the others." "I'm just doing my job." The last girl cried in this kitchen for an hour before quitting. Rosa's voice was gentle. Mr. Hawthorne threw a book at the wall near her head because she'd arranged his desk wrong. She ran out screaming. Did the book hit her? No. Then she overreacted. Iris closed her book. "I've had worse things thrown at me. A book near my head barely registers." "You're not afraid of him." "I'm afraid of being homeless." Iris met Rosa's eyes. "Fear of him is a luxury I can't afford. I need this job, so I'm going to do it well and not let some angry rich man chase me away." The afternoon brought escalation. Jackson seemed determined to break her. He changed her schedule 3 times in 2 hours, each version contradicting the last. Iris followed each one without complaint, adjusting her tasks with the same efficiency. He knocked over a vase she'd just arranged. She cleaned it up silently and rearranged it. He spilled coffee on a floor she just mopped. She mopped it again while humming softly under her breath. Her calm was driving him insane. Every other maid had cracked by now, dissolved into tears or rage or desperate apologies. This woman acted like his behavior was mildly inconvenient weather instead of psychological warfare. At 4 p.m., he summoned her to his study. She arrived promptly, still in her uniform, hands clasped professionally in front of her. Jackson sat behind his desk, fingers steepled, gray eyes cold. "I've reviewed your work today. It's inadequate." "Inadequate how?" "The guest rooms weren't properly cleaned. Dust remains. Organization is poor. Your efficiency is lacking." Iris pulled out her phone, opened her photos. "I documented every room after cleaning. Would you like to review the evidence?" Jackson's jaw clenched. "That's not necessary." "I think it is." Iris stepped forward, placed her phone on his desk. "Because you're criticizing work you haven't actually inspected. You're just trying to provoke a reaction. It won't work. You're insubordinate. I'm competent. There's a difference." Iris met his gaze steadily. Every previous maid probably broke down when you criticized them, begged for another chance, tried desperately to please you. I'm not doing that. I know my work is excellent because I've been doing this since I was 10 years old. So either fire me for real or let me do my job without the performance. Jackson stood abruptly. "Fine. Let's inspect your work together. If I find a single flaw, you're gone." "Deal." They walked through every room she cleaned. Jackson examined everything with meticulous attention, ran his fingers along surfaces checking for dust, inspected corners, opened drawers to check organization, even checked under furniture. Iris followed silently, arms crossed, waiting. He found nothing. Every surface gleamed. Every item was perfectly placed. The organization was flawless, better than anything his previous staff had achieved. He stood in the 6th room, frustrated and impressed in equal measure. "Where did you learn to work like this?" "My mother." Iris's voice softened slightly. "She cleaned houses for wealthy families. Took me with her starting when I was 8. Taught me every trick, every shortcut, every way to make a house perfect. She said if you're going to do something, do it so well they can't find fault. Make yourself indispensable." What happened to her? "Cancer. 5 years ago. We couldn't afford treatment." Iris looked away. "She died in a county hospital while I sat beside her bed and promised I'd make something of myself, that her sacrifices wouldn't be wasted." Jackson was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost some of its edge. You've proven your point. The work is acceptable. It's not acceptable. It's exceptional. Iris turned back to him. Don't diminish it because you're uncomfortable admitting I'm good at what I do. You're arrogant. I'm confident. Again, there's a difference. Arrogance is thinking you're better than you are. Confidence is knowing your worth. I'm worth every penny you're paying me, and we both know it. Something almost like a smile crossed Jackson's face. Almost. You're unlike anyone I've ever met. Good. Maybe that's why I'm still here and they're not. That evening, Sebastian found Iris finishing her last tasks. He looked stunned. You survived the first day. That's never happened. Day's not over yet. Is he going to fire me before I leave? I don't think so. Sebastian's voice held wonder. He hasn't fired anyone after 5 p.m. before. Usually they're gone by noon. Then I'll see you tomorrow. Iris gathered her things. Same time? Same time. And Miss Cole? Thank you. It's been peaceful today. No crying, no screaming, no emergency calls to the agency. Just work getting done. That's all I came here to do. Iris walked out through the iron gates as the sun set, her body exhausted but her pride intact. She'd survived day one with the infamous Jackson Hawthorne, not by cowering or pleasing him, but by refusing to play his game, by treating him like what he was, a difficult employer, not a god. Behind her, in his study, Jackson stood at the window, watching her leave. For the first time in 6 months, he was looking forward to tomorrow. Not because he wanted to torment his maid, but because he wanted to understand her. This proud, fierce woman who looked at him without fear and spoke to him without reverence. She was either going to drive him completely insane or change everything. He wasn't sure which possibility unsettled him more. Week 2 started with a shift neither of them expected. Jackson stopped actively trying to break Iris and started watching her instead, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. He noticed things he'd never noticed about previous staff. How she arrived 30 minutes early every morning and stayed late to finish tasks properly. How she treated the other staff with genuine kindness, even though they were wary of befriending anyone associated with him. How she read during her lunch breaks, actual literature, not trashy magazines. How she never asked for anything, never complained, just worked with quiet dignity that made everyone else's competence look like laziness. One evening, Jackson was working late in his study when he heard a sound from the library across the hall. Soft, muffled, quickly suppressed. He investigated and found Iris standing on a ladder dusting the top shelves, tears streaming silently down her face. She was trying to hide it, wiping her eyes with her sleeve while continuing to work. What's wrong? His voice came out harsher than intended. Iris, startled, nearly dropped the duster. Nothing. Just dust in my eyes. Don't lie to me. Jackson moved closer. You're crying. It's none of your business. Iris climbed down the ladder, avoiding his gaze. I'm still working. My personal emotions don't affect my performance. Tell me what's wrong or you're fired. Iris spun to face him, anger flashing in her eyes. You can't fire me for having feelings. That's not in the contract. Try me. They stared at each other, tension crackling. Finally, Iris exhaled slowly and said today would have been my mother's birthday. She'd be 53. We used to spend the whole day together, just us. Now I spend it cleaning someone else's house and pretending I'm fine. Jackson didn't know what to do with raw grief. He'd built his entire life around emotional control, around never showing weakness, never letting anyone see cracks in his armor. But something about Iris's honesty disarmed him completely. Take the rest of the evening off. No. Iris shook her head. Work helps. Sitting alone in my apartment, thinking about what I've lost just makes it worse. I'd rather be here doing something useful. Jackson found himself asking a question he'd never asked any employee. What was she like? Your mother. Iris hesitated, clearly surprised. Then the words came. About growing up poor in a neighborhood where hope went to die. About her mother working 3 jobs to keep them fed and housed, cleaning houses during the day, waitressing at night, doing laundry on weekends. About never having much, but always having love. About her mother getting sick and hiding it for months because they couldn't afford doctors. About finally going to the emergency room when the pain was unbearable and learning the cancer was stage 4. About watching her mother waste away in a hospital bed, apologizing for being a burden, asking Iris to promise she'd make something of herself. We couldn't afford treatment. Iris's voice was hollow. Couldn't afford the medications that might have given her a few more months. She died holding my hand, telling me she was proud of me, that I was going to do great things. And here I am, cleaning houses just like she did. Some great things. You survived. Jackson heard himself say, "You're still here. That's not nothing." Iris looked at him, really looked at him, and something in his eyes made her ask what happened to you. What made you like this? Jackson should have shut down the conversation, should have reminded her of boundaries and professional distance. Instead, he found himself talking about growing up in the Mafia, raised by a father who believed emotion was weakness and sentiment was fatal, about being taught to fight before he could read, learning to shoot before he learned to ride a bike, about his younger sister Evelyn, the only soft thing in his brutal childhood, about her bright laugh and gentle heart that had no place in their world, about the night she was killed when Jackson was 19, caught in crossfire during a territory dispute, about holding her dying body in the street while his father shouted orders and their enemies escaped. I wasn't strong enough to protect her. Jackson's voice was flat, emotionless, hiding an ocean of pain beneath. I was the older brother. It was my job, and I failed. So I spent the next 15 years becoming strong enough that I'd never fail again. Built an empire, eliminated threats, made everyone fear me, so no one would dare hurt what's mine. But power didn't fill the empty space. Iris said softly, understanding in her eyes. No, it didn't. They stood there in the library, surrounded by books and ghosts, two people who'd built walls around their hearts for different reasons. Iris because she'd lost everything and couldn't bear to lose more. Jackson because he'd failed the one person who mattered and punished himself by never matching to anyone else. I'm sorry about your sister. Iris's voice was genuine. And I'm sorry you think being feared is the same as being strong. It keeps people alive. It keeps people away. There's a difference. Jackson looked at her and realized she was the first person in 15 years who spoke to him like he was human instead of monster. It should have angered him. Instead, it made him feel something he'd thought he'd killed long ago. Hope. From that night forward, things changed. Jackson started seeking out Iris's company, asked her opinion on things that had nothing to do with cleaning, engaged her in conversations about books, about politics, about life. He even smiled occasionally, rare flashes of warmth that transformed his entire face. The household staff whispered that the new maid had done the impossible. She'd made Jackson Hawthorne human again, made the devil remember he had a heart. But the shift brought complications neither of them wanted to name. Jackson caught himself thinking about Iris constantly, noticing how she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, how her rare smile lit up her entire face and made his chest ache, how her presence made his massive empty house feel less like a mausoleum and more like a home. He was falling for her, and it terrified him because he'd spent 15 years avoiding exactly this. Connection meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant someone could hurt you. And he'd sworn after Evelyn that he'd never give anyone that power again. Iris felt it too, but refused to acknowledge it. She was here to work, to survive, to pay her bills, and maybe save enough to build something better. Falling for her emotionally unavailable Mafia boss employer was the stupidest thing she could possibly do. It was a cliché. It was dangerous. It was a guaranteed path to heartbreak. But when Jackson looked at her with those gray eyes that saw straight through her defenses, when he asked about her day like her answer actually mattered, when he brought her coffee exactly how she liked it without her ever telling him her preference, she felt walls she'd built crumbling piece by piece. 3 weeks in, Rosa found Iris staring out the kitchen window during her break, lost in thought. You're falling for him. I'm not. The denial was automatic. You are. Rosa's voice was gentle. And he's falling for you too. Everyone can see it. It doesn't matter. Iris turned away from the window. He's my employer. I'm his maid. That's all this is. Is it? Iris didn't answer because she didn't have a good lie ready. The truth was too complicated and too frightening to say out loud. That yes, she was falling for Jackson Hawthorne. falling for the man beneath the ruthless exterior. The one who read poetry late at night when he thought no one knew. The one who secretly donated to cancer research. The one who looked at her like she mattered. But falling in love with him meant risking everything. Her job, her stability, her carefully rebuilt heart. And Iris had learned young that loving people just gave them power to destroy you. So she did what she always did when emotions got complicated. She worked harder, stayed later, buried herself in tasks, so she didn't have time to think about how Jackson's rare smiles made her pulse race, or how his voice, saying her name, felt like coming home. But some things couldn't be buried forever, and the explosion was coming whether either of them was ready or not. The explosion came on a Thursday night when Iris was leaving the estate after a 14-hour shift. She was exhausted, thinking only about getting home, and collapsing into bed. She didn't notice the black SUV idling across the street until two men grabbed her from behind. She fought instantly. Years of survival instincts kicked in as she drove her elbow into one man's ribs, stomped on the other's foot, screamed loud enough to wake the neighborhood. But there were three of them, and they were trained. A hand clamped over her mouth. Arms like steel bands dragged her toward the vehicle. She bit down hard, tasted blood, heard cursing. Then something hit the back of her head, and the world went dark. She woke in a warehouse, hands zip-tied to a chair, head pounding. A man sat across from her, mid-40s with cold eyes and an expensive suit. He smiled like a snake. "Miss Cole, I'm Kate Sterling. I believe you work for Jackson Hawthorne." Iris said nothing, trying to assess her situation. Two guards by the door, both armed. No windows she could see. Her phone was gone. "I'm going to be direct." Kate leaned forward. "Hawthorne took 3 territories from me last year. Killed 6 of my men. Cost me millions. I want them back, and you're going to help me get them. I'm his maid. I don't know anything about his business, but he cares about you." Kate's smile widened. "My sources say he's been different since you arrived. Softer. More distracted. That means you matter, and things that matter can be used. He won't negotiate for me." Iris kept her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "I'm nobody, just staff. Let's test that theory." Kate pulled out a phone, dialed. When Jackson answered, Kate put it on speaker. "Hawthorne, I have something of yours." Jackson's voice came through cold as death. "Who is this?" "Kate Sterling. And before you make threats, listen. I have your little maid. The proud one who thinks she's special. 3 territories, Hawthorne. The ones you took from me. Sign them over by midnight, or I start breaking her bones one at a time." Silence. Iris felt her heart sink. This was it. Proof that whatever she'd imagined between them was delusion. Jackson wouldn't sacrifice territory for a maid. She was replaceable. Then Jackson spoke, his voice different than she'd ever heard it. Quiet. Lethal. Absolutely certain. "You have 1 hour to return her unharmed. Do that, and I'll consider letting you live." Kate laughed. "You're in no position to make demands." "I have. The territories are yours." Jackson cut him off. "All 3. I'll have the paperwork drawn up within the hour. But if there's a single mark on her, if she has so much as a bruise, I will hunt you to the ends of the earth. I will kill everyone you've ever loved. I will erase your entire bloodline, and I will make it slow." The coldness in his voice made even Cade hesitate. "You're bluffing. No one gives up that much territory for a maid." "She's not a maid." Jackson's voice was steel. "She's mine, and I don't negotiate when it comes to what's mine. Return her in 1 hour, unharmed, and take your territories. Or refuse and learn exactly why people fear me." Cade ended the call, looking shaken. Iris couldn't process what she'd just heard. Jackson was surrendering territory without hesitation, choosing her over power. It was insane. Within 45 minutes, Jackson's men stormed the warehouse. The assault was swift and brutal. Iris heard gunfire, shouting, then the door exploded inward. Jackson walked through the smoke and chaos like an avenging angel, gun in hand, his gray eyes scanning until they found her. He crossed the space in seconds, cut her restraints with a knife, gathered her into his arms. "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay." Iris's voice shook. "You came." "Of course I came." His hands framed her face, checking for injuries. "Did they touch you? Hurt you?" "Just tied me up. I'm fine." Jackson pulled her against his chest, held her so tight she could barely breathe. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. I thought I lost you. Thought I was too late. Thought I'd failed again. You didn't fail. I'm here. He pulled back enough to look at her, and Iris saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Fear. Raw, undisguised terror at the thought of losing her. Because you matter. You matter more than territory, more than power, more than anything. Choosing you was the easiest decision I've ever made. The guard were clearing out Cade's men. Someone reported that Cade himself had fled during the assault. Jackson didn't care. He just held Iris, unwilling to let go. You gave up 3 territories. Iris's voice was small. That's millions of dollars. Your people will think you're weak. Let them think whatever they want. Jackson's grip tightened. I spent 15 years building power, so I'd never lose anyone again. But all that power means nothing if I lose you. You taught me that. You taught me what actually matters. I'm just a maid. Stop saying that. Jackson made her look at him. You're not just anything. You're the woman who walked into my house and refused to be intimidated. Who called me out on my behavior. Who treated me like a person instead of a monster. You're the first person in 15 years who made me want to be better instead of just stronger. Tears streamed down Iris's face. I love you. I tried not to. Try to keep it professional. But I love you, and it terrifies me. Why does it terrify you? Because everyone I love leaves or dies. My mother, my friends, everyone. Loving people gives them power to destroy you, and I've been destroyed enough. I'm not going anywhere. Jackson's voice was fierce. I'm the most stubborn man you've ever met. You said it yourself. I don't give up on things I want. And I want you. Not as my maid. As my partner. My equal. The person I build a life with. Your world is dangerous. My world is what I make it. And I'm making it safer. Jackson pulled her closer. I'm done with territory wars and power plays. Done sacrificing everything for an empire that never made me happy. I'm restructuring everything. Going legitimate. Building something you can be proud to stand beside. You do that for me? I'd do anything for you. Because you broke through walls I spent 15 years building. Made me remember what it feels like to care about something beyond survival. Made me want to actually live instead of just existing. Iris kissed him then, desperate and relieved, and full of emotion she couldn't contain. Jackson kissed her back like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. Come home with me. Not as my employee. As mine. Yes. The ride back to the estate was quiet. Jackson held Iris's hand the entire time, occasionally checking her injuries even though she insisted she was fine. When they arrived, the staff lined up in the foyer looking worried. Sebastian stepped forward. Is Miss Cole all right? She's fine. Jackson's arms stayed around Iris's waist. And she's no longer staff. Anyone who disrespects her answers to me directly. Make sure everyone knows. Understood, sir. 3 months later, the transformation was complete. Jackson had restructured his entire organization, moving away from violence toward legitimate business. Real estate, investments, security firms that operated within the law. Some of his old associates thought he'd gone soft. He didn't care. Iris moved into the mansion, not as staff, but as Jackson's partner. She managed the household not through servitude, but through competence and leadership. The staff respected her because she'd been one of them and never forgot it. One evening, Jackson found her in the library reading. He sat beside her, took her hand. I have something to ask you. Iris set down her book. What? Marry me. Not because I need you, or because you complete me, or any of that romantic nonsense. Marry me because you're the only person who sees me clearly and loves me anyway. Because you make me want to be better. Because I choose you every day, and I want to keep choosing you for the rest of my life. That was actually pretty romantic. Iris smiled through tears. Despite your best efforts. Is that a yes? It's a yes. I'll marry you, Jackson Hawthorne. But only if you promise to keep being insufferable occasionally, so I remember why I loved you in the first place. He laughed, real and genuine. Deal. They married 6 weeks later in a small ceremony. Iris wore a simple white dress. Jackson smiled the entire time. When the officiant pronounced them married, Jackson kissed his wife and whispered thank you for not running away that first day. Thank you for being worth staying for. Years later, people would tell the story of the proud, Maid who conquered the unconquerable, who walked into hell and came out holding the devil's hand, who proved that real strength wasn't cruelty or control, but the courage to be vulnerable, to choose love over power, to let someone pass your walls even when every instinct screamed to stay safe. Iris never forgot where she came from. She established programs to help people in poverty access education and employment, built her mother's dream of a community center that offered resources to struggling families, used Jackson's wealth and connections to create real change. And Jackson, the man who terrorized staff and ruled through fear, became known for something else, for keeping his word, for protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, for building an empire his sister would have been proud of. On their 5th anniversary, Iris found Jackson standing at the library window. "You're thinking about her. About Evelyn. Always." He pulled Iris close. "But I'm also thinking about you. About how you saved me from becoming the monster I was turning into. About how lucky I am that you were too stubborn to quit that first day." "I'm still stubborn. I know." He kissed her temple. "It's one of my favorite things about you." They stood together watching the sunset paint the sky gold and red. Two people who'd been broken by life and put themselves back together, who'd found in each other not completion, but partnership, not salvation, but choice. The proud maid and the ruthless boss. Equals. Partners. Home. From maid to queen, from power struggle to partnership, from broken souls to unbreakable bond. Iris and Jackson proved that real love requires equals, not submission. She didn't just last a day. She conquered his heart and changed his world. Want more stories of fierce women and powerful men? Turn on all notifications. Drop a fire emoji if you believe in strong love.